In the past few years, many families in a small American town called Riverhill began to feel worried about their jobs and their future. It all started when a big mistake happened at one of the town's largest factories. The factory made car parts that were sold to other cities and states, and almost everyone in Riverhill knew someone who worked there. One day, a computer error stopped the machines, and no one noticed the problem for 2 whole weeks. During that time, the factory sent out many broken parts by accident. When the car company in Detroit checked the new parts, they found they did not work. This caused not only anger but also fear that the mistake might be too expensive to fix. Because of this one small mistake, other factories and businesses also began to worry. People started talking about losing their jobs, and some cafes and stores sold less each week. Neighbors began sharing rumors about what might happen next, making people even more scared. Jackson, a father of 3, lost his job at the factory. His wife Linda looked for extra cleaning work so they could pay their bills. A sense of sadness fell over the community, but some people in Riverhill tried to find answers and ways to fix their problems, hoping that their town could become strong again. After the computer mistake at Riverhill's factory, hard times did not stop with Jackson and his family. All around town, many people were facing similar struggles. When the factory sent out broken car parts, they lost the trust of big companies that bought from them. This did not only hurt the factory workers, but it also hurt people who drove trucks, repaired machines, filled orders, cleaned floors, and sold food nearby. They were all feeling the change, even if they did not expect it at first. At the heart of the problem, there was something most people could not see. For many years, the managers in the factory had used old computers and did not pay attention to machine updates. They thought it would save money to avoid changing things. But in truth, using cheap equipment and skipping repairs gave the factory more problems. The people in charge believed everything would always work fine. They ignored workers like Jackson, who sometimes warned about strange noises in the machines. The struggle was hard for families like the Walkers, who owned a store near the factory. When workers lost jobs, they also bought less food and clothes, so the Walker store barely made money. Mrs. Walker had to let go of her only helper because she could not pay her anymore. She felt lonely and terrified she would lose her shop, which had been in her family for 3 generations. Farther away from town, some farms also saw less business since the cafes and restaurants bought fewer eggs, milk, and bread. Ruth, who ran a dairy farm, noticed that she had to throw away milk that nobody would buy. Each night, she talked to her husband about selling one of their old tractors to make ends meet. Not everyone lost their job right away. Some people further up in the company, like high-level bosses, were not affected much at first. They still earned salaries and made choices. Some thought about moving the business out of Riverhill to another state where making repairs was cheaper. These decisions left families feeling helpless, as if their voices did not matter. Even in the local school, teachers worried about students whose parents could no longer buy lunch or help with homework. School counselors met with children like Jackson's youngest, Mia, who missed her dad being home at the usual time. People began to doubt themselves. Jackson sat at his kitchen table in the early morning, looking at the unpaid bills. He wondered if he could have done something different to save his job or warn others. Linda sometimes cried in the middle of the night, feeling she should do more. The stress grew, making it hard for people to sleep or laugh as they used to. Children noticed their parents were quieter and more serious. Friends who used to meet and talk at the cafe now went straight home. At the library, a few townspeople tried to understand what they could do. They read about other towns that suffered from factory mistakes. They learned that big businesses often did not listen to small town worries. Sometimes, government rules and policies supported large companies, not local workers. Banks asked for payments on time and did not offer extra help. These truths made it feel even more difficult to find hope. Still, some Riverhill residents shared advice and small jobs with each other, trying to support their neighbors as best as they could, even if they were tired and scared. People in Riverhill knew that life was hard, but they did not stop trying to find ways to get better. At first, many felt alone and unsure about the future. Some wanted to speak with factory managers about improving safety and fixing the old machines, but workers feared losing their jobs if they spoke up. The factory leaders worried about spending money on new parts or training. They thought it would take too much time and did not want to look weak in front of the car company in Detroit. Because of this, the bosses did not welcome new ideas, and workers felt stuck. Banks stayed strict, asking for bill payments every month and refusing to help people in trouble. Even the city council argued about how they could help, and did not agree on one solution. Some leaders said the problem was just bad luck, while others believed Riverhill should raise money for repairs and make better plans for the future. Still, something good began to happen when Dr. Annie Brooks arrived in town. She was an expert who traveled to small places to help fix economic problems. She spoke at the library and listened to stories from the workers, small business owners, and farmers. Annie explained that this kind of trouble was not just bad luck. It was because of a system where only a few at the top make decisions. She said the company needed to listen to its workers, update its machines, and train people to do new kinds of jobs too. She offered simple steps, like holding monthly meetings where everyone could share ideas or creating a group to check machines before anyone used them. "If we all work together," Annie said, "you can make changes." Some people loved hearing her. Jackson and Linda liked the idea of group meetings because they believed workers knew a lot about how the factory really worked. Mrs. Walker also felt hope for the first time in weeks, thinking she could maybe sell new things if the factory ordered them from her store. But not everyone was happy about Annie's ideas. Some of the highest bosses called her plans too costly. They said the company did not have the money for new parts or worker classes. They wondered if the town could really change anything at all. The city council voted on Annie's group check plan. The decision was close, but at last, they agreed to try it one time on the oldest machine in the factory. Jackson signed up to lead the check, and Linda made sandwiches so everyone had food at the meeting. The workers met, talked, and pointed out where repairs were easy to do. After the first meeting, people felt more confident. It was only a small start, but the oldest machine ran a little smoother, and no mistakes were made that week. Dr. Brooks cheered everyone and told them each small win counted. Even people from the farm and store wanted to join next time, hoping they too could help. For the first time since the trouble started, laughter was heard in Riverhill. Friends began to talk again about what the future might look like if they kept working together, one step at a time. Soon after, the group began checking machines and finding small problems. Things in Riverhill seemed to be getting better. Machines ran with fewer mistakes, and some workers felt proud to be a part of the new group. Mrs. Walker even started selling more sandwiches and work gloves because workers visited her store before each meeting. This new spirit of working together made some families sleep a little easier, but then news came that changed everything. The car company in Detroit, still worried about the mistakes from months ago, announced in the newspaper that it might stop buying parts from Riverhill's factory. If this happened, the whole town would lose even more jobs and businesses could close for good. The news spread quickly. People read about it on their phones, and it was on the local TV station. Some young people started writing messages online to tell others how sad and angry they felt. They made video clips to share stories about their parents and friends who might lose everything if the factory lost Detroit's business. One clip showed Jackson fixing a machine with his friends, wiping sweat from his forehead, and talking about how much he loved his job and his town. Kids at the local school painted signs with words like, "Save our town," and "We are Riverhill." These signs went up in front yards, stores, and even the library windows. Soon the newspapers from nearby cities wrote about Riverhill. The story even made it to a big TV station across the state, which sent a reporter to meet Dr. Annie Brooks. She explained on the news that the town was working hard to repair things and to learn from mistakes. She said, "Riverhill is showing other towns that change is possible when people work together." Her words gave some hope, but it was hard to escape the fear. The city council called an emergency meeting. People packed into the old town hall and took turns speaking. Some asked the government to help by giving a loan to fix all the machines, while others said the company should be more honest and open with workers. A few factory bosses were nervous because they never liked so much attention. Some only wanted to wait and hope the problem would go away, but the public did not agree anymore. Outside the meeting, students protested with homemade posters, and neighbors held hands around the factory to show support. They wanted the bosses, and everyone watching on TV, to know that Riverhill cared deeply about its future. At the same time, the boss of the car company in Detroit saw the news and read almost 100 emails sent from people in Riverhill. He was impressed by the outpouring of support. He called the factory and demanded a video call with the workers' group and a live tour of the machine checks. Jackson and a few others showed him how they fixed problems, explained what changes they had made, and shared their ideas for improving even more. The pressure was greater than ever, and everybody felt it. If Detroit gave up on them now, many would have to leave Riverhill forever. The hope and fear mixed together in every home and shop. The town stood together, ready for the biggest challenge yet, knowing that the eyes of the world were watching. The day of the factory's big video call with the Detroit car company finally arrived. The workers were nervous. Jackson barely slept the night before. Linda made extra sandwiches and gave him an old lucky coin that had belonged to her father. Outside, the whole town seemed to be holding its breath. People stood in small groups on the sidewalks, eyes fixed on their phones, waiting for news. At the school, teachers let students take a break to watch the TV. Signs made by the children hung in the hallways, bright and hopeful, even while many felt scared inside. Inside the factory, everyone was busy. Jackson cleaned his machine for the third time, while Mrs. Walker, invited as a community guest, helped pass out coffee and snacks. The bosses checked their notes and argued in low voices, worried that one wrong word would ruin their chance. Dr. Annie Brooks stood with the workers, calm but serious. The call started, and the camera moved down the production line. Jackson spoke first and explained how the group check system worked now. He pointed to the book where workers wrote down problems and fixes, which everyone could see. Other workers showed how they had repaired small parts that used to be forgotten. One young engineer named Kevin presented a new plan to track computer errors before anything went wrong. The boss from Detroit, his face strong and careful on the screen, asked hard questions. He wanted to know how the factory would promise that bad parts never left again. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jackson, voice slightly shaking, said, "We made mistakes, and we took responsibility. We learned from them, and now we check every part, every machine, every day. We want to earn your trust back by showing you, not telling you." Annie added, "Let Riverhill stand as proof that hard times can turn into growth if people are given tools and voices." After the meeting, the Detroit boss thanked everyone and promised to decide soon. The air in the town was heavy over the next hours. Some went to the church to pray. Others gathered at the cafe or waited near the phone in the city hall. Rumors spread. Some were sure Detroit would give them another chance. Others believed it was already too late. Emotions ran high. A few bosses argued, blaming each other about the computer mistake, but Mrs. Walker stepped in and told them, "Pointing fingers doesn't feed families. Working together does." That afternoon, news broke across the town's social media and radio. Detroit agreed to keep buying parts from Riverhill, but only if the new checking and training system stayed and a monthly progress report was sent. Joy and relief filled the streets. Children ran out of school cheering, and someone rang the church bell. Even those who had doubted the changes now took pride in their small part. Old arguments ended, and workers who never spoke to each other before shared high fives and tired smiles. Dr. Brooks hugged Linda and Jackson and said, "You showed what can happen when people trust each other." A sense of power shifted from the old bosses, who ruled alone, to the workers and community, who now had a voice in choices. Small businesses were ready to join the checks, and the city council promised more open meetings. Riverhill was not out of trouble yet, but something huge and new had started. People now had hope and trust in themselves. They proved that problems were easier to solve together, and that even the hardest days could lead to something better when a community stood side by side. The days following Detroit's decision felt new for everyone in Riverhill. Streets that once felt empty now buzzed with children laughing, neighbors chatting, and shops opening earlier than before. Jackson returned to work with a sense of pride he had not felt in months. He walked past the old machines, remembering the time they almost lost everything, and paused to thank his team. Each worker, from Kevin the engineer to the janitor who now helped in daily checks, looked at their shoes, but their eyes shone with relief and hope. Jackson's first shift back was busy. He listened for strange noises, cleaned his area, and wrote down simple notes in the repair book. It was a small act, but now everyone took it seriously. At home, Linda stayed busy with extra cleaning jobs, but found more time to sit with her children and talk about what had happened. She knew the past months had been hard, but she felt proud of how the family stuck together. Over dinner, they talked about mistakes and second chances. Even the children wondered how to fix things better, not just in machines, but in families and friendships too. Mrs. Walker's shop had new customers, including people from the farm and factory who never came in before. She added fresh sandwiches and work gloves to the front of her store, and smiled every time someone thanked her for her help at the factory. People across Riverhill talked about what they learned. Some remembered how easy it was to feel helpless when the trouble began. There were moments when fear made everyone silent and lonely. Now, instead of waiting for bosses or big companies to solve things, they believed in doing small things together, checking, listening, talking, sharing. At the city council, leaders from every part of town spoke at the open meetings. Farmers started meeting with town shop owners to talk about what foods or tools could help everyone. The school even started a new class where kids learned teamwork by fixing things around the playground. Dr. Brooks planned more lessons for workers, teaching them ways to solve problems faster and speak up with their good ideas. In tiny offices and busy homes, people ended old arguments and reached out to support friends they ignored before the crisis. Not everything was perfect. Some bosses still worried about costs and argued over who should pay for future repairs. Some families, even after the good news, found it hard to trust that the bad days wouldn't come back. But the change was there for all to see. With the progress reports the company now sent to Detroit, good news spread faster, building a reputation that Riverhill was a place that learned from mistakes and got stronger. Each time a repaired machine ran well for a full week, it felt like a victory. Riverhill's story spread to nearby towns, inspiring others to fix their own problems with teamwork and honesty. Jackson stood outside one evening and watched the sun set over the factory roof, thinking about how close they had come to losing it all. He felt grateful that people in his town chose action and hope, not blame and fear. As the days passed, everyone knew there might be more problems ahead. But they would meet those challenges together, remembering what it took to bring Riverhill back: trust in each other, simple daily action, and never letting fear be bigger than a community's hope. Life in Riverhill settled into a new rhythm. While there was a sense of fresh hope throughout the town, everyone also had to adjust quickly to the new rules and changes. With Detroit watching closely, and the need to send monthly progress reports, the factory workers now followed a new system for every shift. Jackson and his team started each morning with a group meeting. They checked a list of duties, shared any worries, and planned how to handle busy days or factory repairs. This meant that teams spent more time talking and less time guessing whose job was whose. There were still moments of confusion, but people learned to ask questions and double-check their work early instead of hiding mistakes. This shift made mistakes rarer and gave each worker the confidence that his or her voice mattered. Even the youngest new hire. Businesses close to the factory, like Mrs. Walker's shop and the local bakery, felt the change as well. Customers were careful with their money, but liked to support stores that helped during hard times. Mrs. Walker noticed more workers buying lunch at her shop after she posted a sign in the window. "Thank you, Riverhill workers." In the short term, some stores still made less money than before, but friends from town sometimes ordered together so small shops stayed open. The farm community changed too. Ruth and her neighbors began trading eggs or milk directly with cafe owners, skipping the middleman and saving money on both sides. The school janitor traded homemade cheese with Mrs. Walker for school supplies her own grandchildren needed. Even banks and landlords in Riverhill made small adjustments. Local banks set up a special help desk for people trying to pay late bills and wrote simple letters to explain how they could give more time for payments. For people facing eviction or foreclosure, church groups and neighbors worked with leaders to find short-term places to stay. In this new climate, borrowed tools, shared rides, and extra jobs quietly helped dozens of families stand up again. The local government moved quickly too. At city council meetings, leaders said they had to show Detroit and other big buyers that Riverhill could learn and stay responsible. The mayor put together new rules. Now, any business that wanted city funds had to explain their training plans and use updated safety checks like those at the factory. An official at City Hall met once a week with Dr. Brooks to hear worker feedback, and they set up a box for suggestions so shy workers could write notes without fear. Children at the elementary school gathered to paint murals showing teamwork and second chances, a reminder of how the whole town had changed. There were bumps in the road. When new shifts or routines changed, a few workers were slow to adapt, and sometimes tempers got short. Old habits returned late at night, when tired minds made careless mistakes. But the feeling was different than before. Instead of hiding failures, people now stepped forward, knowing they could find solutions together. Shopkeepers met to agree on ways to keep prices fair during tight months, while parents helped each other after school with rides and homework clubs. Even after the main storm was over, Riverhill people did not forget what it felt like to struggle. They tried each day to make small, good choices so the pain of the past would not return. Change was not easy for everyone, but the community was learning, step by step, to adjust, support each other, and hold on to the lessons that turned their crisis into a chance for something better. Months passed, and signs of real, lasting change could be seen everywhere in Riverhill. The most visible difference was the way people worked together across the town. At the factory, the regular morning meetings became part of the workday, just like turning on the machines or wearing safety gear. Younger workers helped the older ones with digital tracking tools, while the older ones shared tricks to spot small problems before they grew serious. Each worker took more pride in the repair book, knowing that every note about a spark or strange sound could help someone else down the line. The bosses, who once stayed shut in their offices, now walked the floors with everyone else, asking questions and giving quick praise for a job well done. Shops along Main Street followed suit. Mrs. Walker started a tradition where store owners met once a week to talk about what goods were needed, new sales ideas, or if anyone needed a helping hand. On weekends, families from different parts of town came together for a local market day. There, farmers traded eggs and fruit with bakers, neighbors sampled each other's recipes, and runners delivered baskets to older folks who could not attend. These busy, friendly Saturdays made Riverhill feel close-knit in a way it had not been before. Even the town's annual parade grew bigger, now with floats decorated by a mix of factory workers, farm kids, and local teachers, each group cheering for others. But as Riverhill grew stronger, not everything became simple. The new routines, while positive, sometimes felt tiring. Some older workers still grumbled about following checklists, claiming they knew their machines without it. Shop owners argued about which products should be given space at the market. Parents tried to protect their children from stress, but old fears could rise quickly when business was slow or news from Detroit wasn't perfect. Every few months, small disagreements popped up in the town meetings, usually about how city money should be used or which business deserved extra support. There were real worries about making too many safety changes too fast or getting trapped by new rules made by outsiders who didn't understand Riverhill. A new issue began to form when younger people started using more online tools to advertise business or shop digitally. Some older shopkeepers said computers made things too complicated, while others worried about losing customers to bigger stores from outside town. There were debates about whether the local school should teach more computer classes or more hands-on work. In these moments, Dr. Brooks sometimes stepped in to help the groups listen to each other and find a middle ground. She reminded people that every change needed both careful planning and a bit of courage to try new things. Some voices in Riverhill said they must protect what made the community special: kindness, teamwork, and honest talk after hard days. Others pressed for quicker progress, dreaming the town could one day become a leader for other small cities. The lessons from the factory mistake: a new respect for teamwork, for speaking out, for listening to many ideas, stayed alive, showing up each time neighbors disagreed but kept talking until they found the next solution. People in Riverhill learned that each step forward brought a few new bumps and questions. But if they worked as a team, listened with care, and shared responsibility, the town could handle the newest problems just as it had before, together with hope.